Today we're talking about executive function and how that plays out at DVFriends. I am Lisa Howe. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications.
And I'm David Calamaro. I am the Associate Head Academic Dean.
Thank you for spending some time with me today, David, to talk about these things.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you, first of all, if you can give our listeners an idea of what executive function challenges might be, what that looks like overall, and how that might play out in an academic setting, and what is the sort of differentiating point where it becomes an actual learning difference that you need to address?
Well, when we talk about executive function here, we're talking about sort of that part of the brain that controls things like organization and time management and thinking flexibly, and memory is really an important part of executive function. And so everybody on every day, really at every moment, is applying sort of their brain to organizing their lives. And no matter how simple or complex things are, it's an important brain function. And so when we talk about folks who have difficulties with executive function, we're talking about folks who may have a difficulty with one or more of those processes. For example, somebody who may have an ADHD diagnosis is going to have difficulty with that attentional piece and with that self-regulation piece. Somebody who has just a working memory difficulty is going to have difficult time holding things in their memory and then using that to produce, and that's going to impact their executive function. Somebody who's dyslexia processes language differently, and it's difficult for them. That's going to impact the speed at which they can do things. And so really, executive function impacts lives of everyone. Executive function changes developmentally as students get older, and we know that really brains aren't fully formed until about folks are 26 or 27 years old. And so we always look at our students as a work in progress when it comes to executive function. And some of our students do not struggle necessarily with executive function challenges, but many of them do, because executive function often goes hand in hand with it, like dyslexia diagnosis or ADHD diagnosis, for example.
So what do we do here at DV generally to support students' executive functioning in terms of sort of approach or philosophy, or kind of just generally how we deal with that and support that?
I think the most important thing that we can do is apply different external structures that are developmentally appropriate for the students, depending on whether they're in first or second grade or they're older students getting ready to graduate. So we sort of think about both explicitly kind of teaching executive function strategies for students to be able to apply independently, but also act as sort of the student's frontal lobe many times, and put those structures in place for students so they can complete whatever tasks they're asked to do, because we're not going to be asking students to do things they can't necessarily do developmentally yet. So it's a kind of a combination of that metacognitive piece of helping them understand what it is that they'll need to do strategically in the future, but also kind of putting those structures in place for students so that they can succeed and show what indeed they do know.
So are there any particular approaches or even national experts that we at DV have kind of leaned into as our roadmap for how to support students?
We've really valued the work of someone named Sarah Ward, who is a national expert in teaching others about executive function, and in particular educators about how to put structures in place to support students with executive function challenges and ADHD challenges. As we know, they go hand in hand. A couple of important aspects of executive function we really key into. For example, understanding the passing of time, something that students who have attentional or executive function challenges struggle with oftentimes. And so we will use analog clocks so that students can actually see as time passes and get a feel for that, because students often naturally can't see that, and then all of a sudden they're working on a task and they look up and they're like, wait, I'm out of time? I didn't know that. So feeling that and seeing it is really important. Another technique that we've integrated into our program is really being explicit about whenever we're asking a student to complete a task, showing them what done might look like for that particular task. And so we're sort of working backwards so that students understand, here's what we're aiming for in a very visual sense. Writing it on the board, showing pictures, talking about it, so using those multisensory techniques. And then kind of working backwards from there and showing the students, here are the things you're going to need to get ready to do that task. And then here are the things you're going to need to do that task. And especially with the younger students that we have here, we use a lot of visuals and manipulatives. So for example, if someone might need scissors to do a task, we have little pictures of scissors that we can magnetically put on a board and show students, this is what you're going to need. It helps them to calibrate their brains to get ready for that task. And so those are just a couple of techniques that Sarah Ward promotes, and we try to do that globally across all different divisions, again, in developmental and appropriate ways.
So why is DV committed to supporting students with executive function challenges?
Well, first and foremost, it's those students, according to both our LD mission and our Quaker mission, we were looking for, that of God, the inner goodness in our students, their infinite inherent worth. Students who have executive function challenges often get slammed in other environments. They could get called lazy, not trying hard enough, and that is not the issue at all. The issue is that their executive functions are getting in the way of them being able to complete whatever task they're being asked to do. And so therefore, sort of in keeping with our Quaker mission, we're looking at them as folks who are bright, who are capable, but who need the right supports in order to be able to do what they need to do. We also recognize that we can actually do things to support students with executive function. So in terms of our program, we're equipped to be able to support that. And so students who have executive function challenges really fit squarely in our student population.
For parents, guardians, adults at home who may be supporting students who really struggle with executive function, what could they do at home to support those students?
Well, when it comes to academic tasks, the first most important piece is to really gain a really good understanding of what kinds of supports are happening in the school and partnering with the school, with the teachers, with the advisor, maybe with the division director if you want to learn more about executive function, and getting an understanding of what the teachers are doing with the student so that you can reinforce those principles at home. So we're not trying to ask parents to be ever doing any work for students. We want to make sure parents are reinforcing the same supports that we're using at school. There are other things that sometimes executive function is going to impact someone getting out the door. And so, we can also have conversations about that and how you might make even checklists or visual cues to folk in order to help them move along in the morning to get where they need to get to and so forth. The best thing to do is really have a conversation with the school and get on the same page around the supports.
Great. Is there anything you'd like to share with me about executive function that I haven't asked you?
Well, I kind of implied this maybe earlier, but I will say that lots of folk confuse executive function challenges with ADHD as one and the same, and they're not really one and the same. And so I just want to underscore that pretty much all students who have an ADHD diagnosis also have executive function challenges. But executive function in and of itself is not in a DSM as a diagnosis. So, but really it will impact anybody who's going to have a learning difference in some way. And so understanding that difference is just a small nuance, but your student may not be ADHD, but they may still have executive function challenges that the school can support.
I really appreciate all the insights that you shared, and I know that our parents and listeners will appreciate it as well.
Thank you very much, Lisa.